Hello everyone. Your Next Move event started in Leuven, Belgium today. Today was day one of the Rapid and Blitz tournament, which features some of the best players in the world. It's a part of the Grand Chess Tour, and it's a part of the qualification cycle for the World Championship. So probably one of the most important events in 2018 so far, besides the Candidates Tournament, of course. And a very prestigious event in which every point matters. And today, 3 rounds of the rapid portion have been played. And Wesley So has had an amazing day. He is in front of the pack, leading the pack in clear first with 2.5 out of 3. With only one draw. He drew against Maxime Vachier-Legrave and he defeated Shakhriyar, Mamedyarov and Caruana. Of course, both technically higher rated than him, but they are all immensely strong players. But still, to defeat 2 players such as Caruana and Mamedyarov in one day is astonishing. The format of the rapid portion is 25 minutes for the game, plus a 10-second delay, so not an increment, but before every move or after your opponent presses the clock, you have a 10-second delay before your clock starts ticking. So if you make a move in the first 10 seconds, no time will be reduced from your clock time. So basically, it's much more useful than the increment, since you are able to play the ending without having to blitz out the moves, because 10 seconds is a very long time, especially at their level, and especially since all of them can play bullet chess pretty strongly. So in this game, Wesley So faced Mamedyarov. He had the white pieces. He opened with pawn to d4, and after knight f6, c4, e6, g3, we entered the Catalan opening, and they entered the open Catalan after a while. So d5, this is the main move. Bishop to g2, d takes c4, the open Catalan. Knight to f3 is the main move. a6, preparing the move b5, and after castles, knight to c6 is played, and you can see that white has sacrificed a pawn temporarily. However, that really doesn't mean that black has an advantage. If anything, white is better in this position, since black had to waste a move to capture away from the center, and now white obviously has 2 central pawns which control a lot of key squares, and after a move such as e4 in some positions, or e3, white has a more solid center and of course more control. So, and the other thing is that the c5 pawn is often easily captured. So in this position, Wesley So plays e3, which is the main move. Rook to b8 is slightly awkward and an uncommon move. Much more often, the move bishop to d7 is played. This is the main line, and in the bishop to d7 open Catalan, white is known to have a slight edge, so perhaps that's why Shakhriyar Mamedyarov went for rook to b8, perhaps even trying to surprise Wesley. So queen to e2 was played, would be played had bishop to d7 been played, attacking the c4 pawn. Now b5 defending, b3, this is the point. You are going to allow black to dissolve his weakness and to capture the b3 pawn, so cb3, ab3, and white has now permanently given up a pawn, but white's pressure along the long diagonal with the Catalan bishop on g2 is critical in this position, and it more than compensates for the loss of a pawn. And you can see that white has already castled, black is yet to develop his last piece before being able to castle, and black has some tactical issues. For example, when this knight moves, then any knight to e5 could be deadly, or at least win the bishop pair for white. So this is by no means better for black, despite the fact that he is up in material. So the main line would continue like this. And even though black hadn't given up the extra pawn yet, white is known to have an edge in this position. But after e3, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov didn't play bishop d7, he played rook to b8, now queen to e2 anyway by Wesley, b5, and now we enter a sort of a similar line, with the difference of the rook being on b8 instead of the bishop being on d7, for what it's worth. So b3, cb3, ab3. And now Mamedyarov plays bishop to d6, and I'm not really sure what the point or the use of the bishop on d6 is. I think I'd prefer it on the e7 square. because it's staring at a wall of pawns on g3, so I'm not sure that that's such a good move. Here rook to d1 was played by Wesley So, simply developing a piece. Queen to e7, bishop to b2, fianchettoing the bishop, castles, rook to c1, bishop to b7, knight to e5 now. And in this position, black has equalized, and black perhaps even stands slightly better. Knight to e5 was a mistake. Now, you might be wondering what happens if either piece takes the knight. If knight takes, of course, that's losing, because after knight e5, pawn e5, black is forced to give up a piece, and black is losing a piece. So after knight to e5, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, knight to d5, is better for white, so that's not a wise decision to make, because now this bishop is passive, and the knight, even though it's on a central square, can easily be dislodged, and it's often a tactical liability. I'm sorry. So a move such as knight to d2 here, rook f to d8, knight to e4, you can see a lot of weak squares in black's position, and the backward c pawn, which is already under pressure, and I think that white has a clear advantage here. So after knight to e5, Mamedyarov, of course, being the second best player in the world, plays the best move, knight to b4, and the position is now completely equal. We have bishop takes b7, rook takes b7. If he allowed Mamedyarov to take his bishop on g2, then the rook would still be on an optimal square on b8. Now on b7, the rook is slightly misplaced, despite the fact that it's defending c7, because now the c6 square is weak, and the move such as knight to c6 could be played, and in fact Wesley So plays it immediately. Knight c6, knight takes, rook takes. You can now see that the a6 pawn is attacked twice, the c7 pawn is under pressure, and it's immobile completely, along with being backwards. So now white has some targets, and black doesn't for now. Here e5 was played, trying to dissolve white's strong center. D takes e5, of course you can't allow black to take, because that would weaken you too much. So d5, bishop e5, an exchange happens, queen to e5, and now, of course, your rook is hanging on a1, so you can either capture a pawn or not capture a pawn and save the rook. So rook a takes a6, doubling rooks along the sixth rank. Here rook to d8 was played, rook to a2. And now a mistake by Mamedyarov. Here he played a very aggressive move, trying to weaken white's king. He played pawn to h5. But this gives Wesley an advantage. What he should have played was knight to e4, preventing the move knight to d2 and trying to put pressure on the d2 square, because you already have the rook staring at it. And if white isn't able to play knight to d2 comfortably, then I believe that black has more piece activity. So knight e4, knight e2, queen to d5 would most probably be played, now attacking for the third time. And you would either have to play rook c to c2 or capture the knight, which would make black's queen far more active than yours, which is on e2. But after rook to a2, Mamedyarov played h5, and now knight to d2 can be played without consequences. h4 seems dangerous, but it really isn't. Knight to f3, queen to e4. Now, of course, your rook is hanging, so you have to do something. You can't be taking the pawn. So rook to c1, at the same time defending the back row from any checks. h3. Now this pawn is becoming a problem, but Wesley is about to find a tactical way to win the pawn. Here rook a to c2 was played, now putting pressure on the c7 pawn, and there isn't really a comfortable way to defend it. It can be defended, but at the cost of time and probably reducing piece activity. And here there's an interesting idea that Shakhriyar and Mamedyarov could have gone for, that's the move g5. Of course, the pawn can't be taken. If knight takes g5, then checkmate. So after g5, you have to decide what you're going to do with your f3 knight, and the position is getting quite dangerous. I'm not even sure what you should be playing here. I think that after g5, you should play rook to c5 or something like that, tactically, but because then you can attack the queen from e5. So let's say rook to c5, let's say g4, and you can play okay, you can play rook to g5 check as well. I'm looking at this with the engine now. I'm guessing this isn't good. Yeah, okay, because of this, yeah. But you can play rook to g5, and after king to f8, knight to h4, yeah, defending, because you have provoked the move g4. So now you can defend the g2 square. But if you don't play rook to c5, then after g5 you can still allow g4 and play knight to h4. That's the defense, but rook to c5 would be the best move. However, after rook a to c2, Shakhriyar didn't find the move g5, which would have complicated the game definitely. He played knight to d5, which is another inaccuracy. It's hard for us simple humans to see why, but this move is imprecise. And now a knight to e1 was played, defending the g2 square finally, and making the queen mobile. Of course, the queen had to defend f3 prior to this. Knight b4, attacking the rook, rook d2, rook takes, queen takes, rook to a7, finally activating the misplaced rook from b7, queen d7, now entering the position, rook to a8. And this was an inaccuracy. What he should have played here was f5 or g6 or g5, trying to complicate matters along the king side. And after rook to a8, he's simply losing a pawn. So I'm not sure how he missed this. I'm not sure whether he was in time trouble. I didn't see the game live. But after rook to a8, simply queen takes h3. So just giving back. Not giving back the pawn, in fact, going a pawn down now, because white already regained the lost pawn. So now Mamedyarov is a pawn down from being a pawn up, and now white actually has an easy task controlling this position without the pawn on h3, which was causing tactical problems. So now knight to d3, knight takes, queen takes. Of course, Wesley is now happy to trade off the pieces because he's a pawn up. b4, firstly saving the b pawn before taking on c7, so to make sure that the queen can't take. b4, queen d2, attacking the rook and the b pawn. Queen to f1, giving up the b4 pawn, so queen b4, rook to b1, not capturing the c pawn but the more advanced b5 pawn, which is a very precise move. Queen c3, queen takes b5, rook to a1, forcing a trade of rooks basically. But now queen to e8 check, king h7, rook takes, king to g2, and now believe it or not, this is with little precision a technically winning endgame for white, even though queen endgames are often drawn with that many pawns on the board. This one is easily winning. So now queen to f6, queen d7, c6, trying to advance the pawn, h4, g6, g4, advancing the pawns, and those were the best moves. Of course, queen can't take on h4 because queen to f7 check. So king g8 defending that, g5, now not allowing queen h4, queen to c3, queen to d8 check. And here, at this point, Wesley So started losing his advantage, and I'm sure that during the game, even if you are a strong super grandmaster, it's not that easy to see how this is winning. And a slight inaccuracy could mean a draw, and this is in fact now much closer to a draw than to a win for white. And you should never forget that black's c-pawn is a passed pawn, and that the black king I'm sorry, can hold off some of the white pawns at least for a while, and that the white king will have to babysit c6, or when it comes here, for example, c2 all the time. So now king h7, queen to d4, trying to exchange the queens. Of course, if black trades queens, it's lost, but he can decline with queen to c2, and now this is already almost completely drawn. The engines are giving +0-1 for white, so definitely a draw. Queen to f4, all zeros, another mistake, attacking f7, even though I'm not sure how this move can be a draw, how this move can be that bad. Apparently he had to play e4 here, stopping the queen from entering the position on f5. Now queen f4, king g8, e4, c5, queen to b8 check, king h7, queen to e8, king to g7, queen to e5 check, king to g8, queen to d5. And here the position is all zeros, and the move that Mamedyarov plays is +5 for white. And he played a blunder which is extremely hard to see. It's extremely hard to see why it's a blunder. He played the move c4, and after c4 white is completely winning. Now let me show you what he should have played. Had Mamedyarov played queen to e2, the position is a draw and you're preparing the move c4. If white wants, he can take on c5, we are going to take on e3. I'm sorry, we are not going to take on e3, you're going to have a perpetual check. So let's say queen takes c5, queen g4 check, king f1, queen d1 check, king g2, queen g4 check, etc. After queen e2, if white does capture on c5, I'm sorry. If white doesn't capture on c5, if he tries king to g3, then you can play c4, forcing a trade of pawns. So let's say queen to d8 check, king g7, queen to d5, and white would be helpless. He would have to trade the pawns and accept a draw. However, after queen to d5, c4, this is losing because of one simple tactical move, and this move is so crushing that Mamedyarov resigned 2 moves later. Wesley So 1 move later, in fact. He played h5. And now, first of all, if you take the pawn, g takes h5, then g6 is winning. And there's nothing you can do to defend your pawn. You're going to get checkmated. After h5, Mamedyarov played queen to d3, and he resigned after Wesley's next move. So here Wesley played h takes g6, and you might think, okay, the f7 pawn is pinned. Of course, white is threatening to capture it. It's attacked twice. But what would happen if queen takes queen? And he resigned here. He didn't play this. But let's say queen takes d5. E takes d5, f takes g6, and the black king is unable to enter the position. These squares are taken. The only way the black king can approach is via f7, e7, d7, d6, and taking on d5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves to grab the pawn, and yeah, you're just too slow to do that. And now let me show you the calculation. So let's say king to f3. c3, trying to get the white king far away as possible. King e3, c2, king d2, c1, queen, king takes. And now watch the path that the black king has to take. King f7, king d2, king e7, king to d3, king to d6, king to e4. The pawns are defended, and white is going to win easily. So an amazing move by Wesley So. This is one of the most crushing moves I've ever seen in Wesley's game. So queen to d5, c4, a mistake which is immediately exploited, and of course the move queen to e2, which should have been played, is preventing the move h5. So it has a clear purpose. It's not just to threaten a perpetual check, it's also stopping the move h5. So yeah, this wasn't a classical game, so it was only a rapid game, 25 minutes with a 10-second delay, so you have to excuse Mamedyarov for blundering c4. He was worse for a portion of the game, but it was a fight, and once again, congratulations to Wesley So, who managed to get 2.5 out of 3 in such a strong field, and come ahead after day 1 of the Your Next Move Rapid and Blitz event. So an amazing achievement for him. I hope that the start of the Grand Chess Tour means that he is going to have a great Grand Chess Tour, and that he is going to have a much better result than last year. Okay, everybody, thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked this instructive Open Catalan by Wesley So and Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, and stay tuned for more chess. Thanks very much. Bye.